What if I told you the most powerful system in the world? It's not the US military. It's not Silicon Valley. It's not even the White House. What if the real source of American power is a trap? A trap so deep, so invisible, and so carefully designed that even America's biggest rivals walk straight into it. A trap so strong that nearly every country on Earth, friend or enemy, knows the system is unfair, but still can't escape it. This system was not built overnight. It wasn't created by accident. It was engineered, piece by piece, by bankers, presidents, advisors, and crises so big they reshaped the world. And the biggest twist, the trap wasn't built for other countries. It was built to save America from collapse. But in doing so, the US created something no one can break, including America itself. This is the story of that trap. The dollar trap. How it was built, how it spread, and why it now controls the entire world economy. Even as cracks are beginning to show, and if you think you already understand the US dollar, what you're about to hear may change everything. The story begins after World War II. Europe was destroyed. Japan was in ruins. The global economy was a smoking crater. But the United States? Its factories were running. Its banks were full of gold, over 70% of the world's gold supply. Its military was unmatched. And in 1944, inside a small hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, 44 nations gathered to ask one question. How do we rebuild the world? The US had one answer. Use our dollar. Not everyone liked the idea. But the world needed stability, and America had the gold to back it. So the deal was made. Every currency would be linked to the US dollar, and the US dollar would be linked to gold at $35 per ounce. Simple, stable, safe. At least that's what they were told. But there was something hidden in this system, a flaw, or maybe a feature, that even most Americans didn't notice. By making the dollar the center of the global system, the US quietly gained the ability to influence the entire world economy, interest rates, trade, capital flows, and even politics. The system looked fair, but power rarely comes without a catch, and the catch was coming. In the 1950s and 60s, the world rebuilt. Factories in Europe restarted. Japan was rising fast. Trade exploded. But every ship, every factory, every global transaction relied on dollars. That meant one thing. The world needed more dollars than America could physically back with gold. But America didn't want to slow down spending. It wanted more. More weapons, more war, more welfare, more global influence. So the US quietly printed more dollars. First, no one noticed. Then, France did. French President Charles de Gaulle accused the US of cheating, spending more dollars than it had gold. De Gaulle sent warships to New York to pick up France's gold and return the dollars. Other countries started doing the same. The hidden flaw in the Bretton Woods system was no longer hidden. America was creating dollars faster than it could justify. The world was waking up. And the US faced a choice: lose global power or break the rules. In 1971, President Richard Nixon shocked the world. He went on television and announced, the US will no longer convert dollars into gold. It was supposed to be temporary. It never ended. In that moment, the entire world went from gold-backed money to trust-backed money. Every currency instantly became just paper. And the global financial system entered a new era, one where America held something far more valuable than gold: control. But this transformation wasn't the end of the trap. It was only the beginning. After 1971, the world should have abandoned the dollar. In theory, everyone was free to create a new system, a new standard, a new reserve currency. But that didn't happen. Here's why. Global trade was already built on dollars. Oil, the lifeblood of the world, was priced in dollars. Countries that tried to escape faced chaos in their currencies. US financial markets were too big to ignore. The dollar wasn't just money anymore. It was infrastructure. The trap had snapped shut, and America made sure it stayed that way. In the 1970s, the US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia would sell its oil only in dollars, and the US would provide military protection. This created the Petrodollar system, a system so powerful that every country now needed dollars to keep their lights on. To buy oil, they needed dollars. To get dollars, they had to trade with America, or borrow from American banks. Even countries that hated the US couldn't escape, but the most shocking twist? This system didn't just trap the world, it trapped America too. Because once every country depended on dollars, America was forced to keep printing them. More dollars for oil, more dollars for trade, more dollars for global liquidity. The trap could no longer be turned off, not without breaking everything. And that's exactly what economists began warning. If the dollar system collapses, the entire world collapses with it. But even that wasn't the final twist. The real danger was only just beginning. The story of the dollar trap does not end with oil or Bretton Woods. In fact, the real danger begins in the late 1980s and explodes after the year 2000. Because once the world accepted the dollar as the center of everything, America discovered a strange new power. It could run huge deficits, print money during crises, and push interest rates up or down, and the whole world would feel the shockwaves. But this also meant something dangerous. Dollar, in the same way a patient becomes addicted to a drug that keeps them alive. They know it's not healthy. Countries like China, Japan, and Germany began producing, exporting, and saving more than ever before. But instead of storing their wealth in gold or their own currencies, they began storing it in U.S. Treasury bonds. This gave America a free credit card. Wall Street could take risks without consequences because any crash would suck in global dollars and force the Federal Reserve to save the system again. This strange balance of fear and dependence became the heart of the dollar trap. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, a moment when, in theory, the world should have abandoned the dollar for good. American banks collapsed, housing collapsed, confidence collapsed, and yet the opposite happened. Instead of running away from the US dollar, the world ran toward it. Investors sold everything and bought dollars. The dollar still seemed safer than their own currencies. This was the moment the dollar trap revealed its true form. It no longer needed balanced budgets. The world needed dollars more than dollars needed the world. But this new power came with a hidden cost. The trap was now closing on the United States itself. In 2008, the Federal Reserve printed trillions. Every time America solves a crisis with money creation, it stretches the system further. Every time global investors panic and rush into dollars, they tighten the system harder. And every time interest rates move in the U.S., even a tiny bit currencies in Africa, South America, and Asia crash instantly. The world becomes weaker. Many countries tried to escape. China created new trade systems, new digital payment networks, and deals with countries like Brazil and Saudi Arabia. Even Europe tried to make the euro a global competitor. But no matter how big these attempts were, none could replace the one thing only America has: trust built from decades of global usage. The world does not trust the dollar because it loves America. It trusts the dollar because the global system is built around it. And rebuilding a system that big is almost impossible without a global crash. But here's the strange twist. The more the world tries to escape, the stronger the trap becomes. When countries sell dollars, their currencies weaken. When they print more money to defend themselves, inflation rises. When they try to ban the dollar locally, black markets pop up instantly. When they threaten to stop using the dollar, investors get nervous and move their money to the U.S., which strengthens the dollar even more. It is a loop with no exit. Now, the biggest risk is not another country replacing the dollar. The biggest risk is the dollar system breaking from the inside. America's debt is past $34 trillion. Interest payments are higher than its military budget. Over 60% of all global trade still uses dollars. More than half of the world's savings are in U.S. financial markets. The dollar falls too fast, global trade stops, banks fail, currencies collapse, and millions lose jobs. But if the dollar becomes too strong, countries fall into recession. Debt becomes unpayable, and financial crises spread across continents. Today, we are in the most unstable moment since 1971. The U.S. is printing more money to avoid recession. Countries are dumping dollars slowly to reduce risk. New alliances like BRICS are forming their own trade systems. Middle Eastern nations are accepting multiple currencies for oil. Even us allies are quietly preparing for a world after the dollar. But here's the part almost nobody understands. Even if a new system rises, The transition itself could trigger the biggest economic shock in modern history. Because when the trap breaks, it doesn't open, it snaps. Every major pattern we saw before 1971, before 2008, and before every currency shift in history is repeating. Falling trust, currency wars, hidden deals in energy and commodities, and central banks buying gold at the fastest rate in 55 years. All the signs point to one conclusion. The world is preparing for a change, but no one knows what comes after the dollar system. Not China, not Europe, not even America. This is the greatest risk of all. A system built so tightly that nobody can escape. The dollar trap was built slowly, through crises, wars, and secret deals. It became the center of global trade because every alternative was too weak or too late. The trap controls both the world and America. The dollar's power is also its weakness. Every crisis forces more money printing, more debt, and more global dependence. The next shift will not be smooth. Whether the dollar keeps rising or finally breaks, the transition could trigger massive global shocks. The world has lived inside the dollar trap for 80 years. The system is shaking. The patterns are repeating. The next chapter may arrive sooner than anyone expects. Stay prepared. And if you want to understand the hidden forces shaping your money, your future, and the next global reset, make sure you subscribe to Economy Rewind. The story is far from over.